Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars through the main view screen when the distress signal came through. The sharp beeping cut through the quiet hum of the ship's engines and made everyone on the bridge turn toward the communication station where Officer Rachel Stone was already working to decode the message. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the Zelani system," Rachel said as her fingers moved quickly over her console. "It's weak, but it's definitely a distress call." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the readouts. The Zelani were a peaceful water-dwelling species that humans had only made contact with a few months ago. They lived on a beautiful blue world called Zella Prime, about 12 light-years from Earth. Their cities floated on vast oceans and their technology was impressive even if they had never developed weapons of war. "Can you clean up the signal?" Jake asked. Rachel worked for several minutes before nodding. "I think so, sir. Putting it through the universal translator now." The bridge filled with a strange musical sound that gradually became words as the translator worked. The voice that came through was full of fear and desperation. "This is Veltar of the Zelani Council speaking to any ship that can hear this message. Our world faces complete destruction. The void storms approach our system and will strip away our atmosphere in 37 days. We have prepared our only hope for survival, but we need time. Please, if anyone receives this, know that we tried to save ourselves." The message repeated twice more before cutting to static. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Dr. Lisa Harper, their scientist who studied alien life, was already pulling up files on her tablet. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner, who handled weapons and defense, was checking the ship's position. Engineer Ben Clark was running calculations on how long it would take to reach the Zelani system. "Set course for Zella Prime, maximum speed," Jake ordered. The journey took 18 hours at full power. During that time, Lisa studied everything they knew about the Zelani while Alex researched these void storms they had mentioned. Ben worked with his engineering team to make sure the ship was ready for whatever they might find. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zelani system, they immediately saw the problem. A massive wall of dark energy was moving toward Zella Prime like a slow wave of destruction. The sensors showed it would reach the planet in exactly 19 days. "My God," Lisa whispered as she looked at the readings. "That thing is huge. It's like a cosmic hurricane that tears apart anything in its path." Jake ordered the ship to move closer to Zella Prime. As they approached, they could see the Zelani were not sitting quietly waiting to die. Hundreds of their ships moved around the planet in complex patterns while massive construction projects covered the ocean surface. Whatever they were building was enormous and used technology that made their sensors give strange readings. "Captain, I'm picking up a response to our arrival," Rachel said. "The Zelani want to talk." The main screen showed a Zelani leader in what looked like an underwater chamber. Veltar was tall and thin with blue-green skin and large eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. When he spoke, his voice carried both sadness and determination. "Human vessel, we thank you for coming, but there is nothing you can do to help us. The void storm cannot be stopped or turned away. It will destroy our atmosphere and boil our oceans. Every living thing on our world will die." "Maybe we can help," Jake said. "Humans have faced extinction before. We've learned how to survive when everything seems hopeless." Veltar's large eyes seemed to study Jake through the screen. "Your species is young and has never faced anything like this. We have worked for months to create our only hope for survival. In 15 days, we will activate a device that will move our entire world into another dimension where the void storm cannot reach us." Lisa stepped forward, her face showing concern. "Another dimension? That sounds incredibly dangerous. The energy required would be massive." "Our scientists have calculated all risks," Veltar replied. "There is only a small chance of failure. We will save our people and our world by leaving this reality behind. Alex was running scans of the planet while they talked. His face grew pale as he looked at his readings. He moved closer to Jake and spoke in a low voice that only the captain could hear. Sir, the energy readings from their device are off the charts. If that thing goes wrong, it won't just kill them. The explosion could tear holes in space itself. Jake felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. The Zilani thought they were saving themselves, but they might be about to destroy much more than their own world. He looked back at Veltar on the screen, knowing he had to find a way to convince them to stop before it was too late. The countdown had already begun, and in 15 days, the Zilani would either save themselves or accidentally doom countless others in their desperate attempt to survive. Jake called an emergency meeting in the ship's main conference room 2 hours after their conversation with Veltar ended. The senior staff gathered around the oval table while Alex projected his sensor readings onto the wall screen. The numbers and charts painted a terrifying picture of what the Zilani device might do if it activated. The dimensional field generator they're building would require more energy than their entire sun produces in a year, Alex explained as he pointed to different parts of his analysis. When they tried to phase their planet into another dimension, the energy release could create tears in normal space. Lisa had been studying the Zilani psychology files and cultural records. She looked up from her tablet with worry in her eyes. The problem is how they think about survival. Humans have always faced disasters and learned to adapt. We build underground shelters, develop new technology, find ways to live in harsh conditions. The Zilani have never faced anything like this before. Ben was working on his own calculations, using the ship's computer systems. I've been modeling what happens if their device fails. The dimensional rupture would spread outward like ripples in a pond. Every star system within 50 light years could be affected. Rachel had been monitoring communications from other parts of the galaxy, and she had disturbing news to share. Captain, I've been picking up similar distress signals from 3 other systems. The Kethara, the Vrix, and the Luminals are all facing the same kind of destruction from void storms. Are they planning the same kind of escape? Jake asked. Rachel nodded grimly. From what I can tell, yes. They're all building dimensional devices to move their worlds out of normal space. The Kethara say they'll activate theirs in 12 days. The Vrix are planning to use theirs in 18 days. The Luminals haven't decided yet, but their device will be ready in 20 days. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. 4 different alien species were about to try the same dangerous solution at nearly the same time. If even one of their devices failed catastrophically, it could trigger failures in the others. Dr. Danny Wells, their science officer, had been quietly working on his tablet during the discussion. When he finally spoke, his voice was grim. I've been researching these void storms in our astronomical databases. They're not random events. They happen in a cycle every 50,000 years as part of the galaxy's natural processes. Natural processes? Lisa asked. Donnie nodded and shared his data with the wall screen. The galaxy cleanses itself of excess energy and matter periodically. It's like a forest fire that clears out old growth to make room for new life. Humans survived the last cycle 50,000 years ago because we were already living underground and had learned to adapt to hostile environments. Jake studied the data and felt the weight of an impossible decision settling on his shoulders. So these void storms are normal and natural, but these alien species don't have time to adapt like we did. Exactly, Danny continued. They're trying to cheat death by running away to another dimension. But if they all succeed, they'll tear holes between dimensions that could affect the entire galaxy. If they fail, the explosions could kill millions of other species who aren't even threatened by the void storms. Ben looked up from his calculations with a pale face. Captain, if all 4 devices activate and fail, the dimensional cascade could destroy everything within 200 light years. That's hundreds of star systems and billions of lives. The room was quiet for a long moment as everyone absorbed the full scope of the crisis. Jake looked around the table at his crew and realized they were facing a choice that no one should have to make. They could respect the right of 4 alien species to try to save themselves, even if it meant risking catastrophic destruction. Or they could intervene against the wishes of those species to protect countless others. What are our options? Jake asked. Alex was the first to respond. We could try to convince them that their plan is too dangerous, show them our calculations and hope they listen to reason. Lisa shook her head. I don't think that will work. These species are desperate, and they've already committed everything to their escape plans. They won't want to hear that their only hope for survival might kill them anyway. Ben had been thinking about technical solutions. We might be able to develop some kind of dampening field that could safely shut down their devices. But we'd have to get close enough to install it, and they're not going to let us interfere with their survival plans. Rachel looked uncomfortable as she spoke. Captain, if we try to stop them by force, we'll be attacking 4 different alien species who are just trying to save themselves. How is that different from what we'd be trying to prevent? Jake understood her concern, but he also understood the mathematics of the situation. 4 species trying to save themselves could accidentally kill thousands of other species who had done nothing wrong. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few, even when the few had understandable reasons for their actions. We have to try diplomacy first, Jake decided. Lisa, I want you to prepare detailed presentations showing exactly what their devices could do. Include data on alternative survival methods that humans have used. Maybe we can convince at least some of them to try a different approach. And if they refuse to listen? Alex asked. Jake took a deep breath before answering. Then we'll have to stop them, all of them, even if it means making enemies of 4 different species to save the rest of the galaxy. The crew looked around the table at each other, understanding the weight of what their captain was saying. They were about to become the people who decided who lived and who died on a galactic scale. They were about to take responsibility for choices that entire civilizations couldn't make for themselves. Send messages to the other 3 species. Jake ordered. Tell them we're coming to help. Don't mention that we might have to fight them to do it. 3 days after Jake sent emergency requests to the human fleet, Admiral Susan Martinez arrived with reinforcements. Her flagship was the heavy cruiser Defiant Storm, accompanied by the science vessel Newton's Pride and the medical frigate Mercy's Call. Jake had never been so relieved to see other human ships as when they dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Zella Prime. Admiral Martinez was a veteran commander who had fought in the border wars against pirate fleets and explored more unknown systems than any other human officer. When she materialized on the bridge of the Horizon's Edge using the transport beam, Jake could see the determination in her eyes that had made her famous throughout the human fleet. Captain Morrison, brief me on the situation, she said without wasting time on pleasantries. Jake showed her all the data they had collected about the 4 alien species and their dimensional escape plans. The Admiral studied the projections of what would happen if the devices failed, and her expression grew darker with each new piece of information. 4 species, 4 devices, all activating within days of each other, she summarized. Any one failure could trigger the others. The cascade effect could tear apart a significant portion of the galaxy. Yes, ma'am, Jake replied. We've prepared diplomatic missions to each world to try to convince them to abandon their plans, but our chances of success are not good. Dr. Lisa Harper had prepared detailed presentations for each species, taking into account their psychology and cultural backgrounds. Dr. Peter Kim, a specialist in alien psychology who had arrived on the Newton's Pride, worked with her to refine the approach for each species. The diplomatic missions began immediately. Lisa and Peter took small shuttles to each of the 4 worlds, accompanied by security teams and equipped with translation devices and holographic projectors to show their data clearly. The first meeting was with the Zelani Council on Zella Prime. Veltar and 12 other leaders gathered in their grand underwater chamber to hear what the humans had to say. Lisa presented the mathematical models showing how their dimensional device could fail catastrophically, but the Zelani response was politely dismissive. "We appreciate your concern," Veltar said in his musical voice, "but our scientists have spent months calculating every possibility. The chance of failure is acceptable when the alternative is certain death." Lisa tried to show them human survival techniques, explaining how people on Earth had lived through ice ages, asteroid impacts, and atmospheric changes by building underground cities and developing environmental control systems. The Zelani listened politely but clearly believed their technological solution was superior to primitive human methods. The meeting with the Kethara was much more hostile. These crystalline beings lived in towering cities made of living rock, and considered themselves the most advanced technological civilization in the galaxy. When Lisa tried to explain the dangers of dimensional manipulation, their chief engineer Zonakala interrupted her presentation. "Soft-flesh creatures from a young world dare to lecture us about technology?" Zonakala's voice sounded like grinding stone. "Your species has existed for mere thousands of years while we have built wonders for millions. We do not need lessons from primitives. The Vrix were even worse. These insect-like beings lived in massive hive cities and thought as a collective, rather than as individuals. Their queen speaker Zixthara dismissed the human warnings without even looking at the data. Lower life forms cannot comprehend the complexity of our thoughts," she buzzed through the translator. "Your concerns are noted and ignored. We will save ourselves as we see fit." Only the luminals showed any interest in the human proposals. These energy-based beings existed as pure consciousness within containment fields, and were naturally curious about other forms of life. Their Council Prime, Lux Andra, studied the human data carefully and asked many questions about underground survival techniques. "Your species has an interesting approach to existence," Lux Andra said, her voice like the sound of wind chimes. "You adapt rather than transcend. This perspective has value we had not considered." But even among the luminals, the council was split. Half wanted to consider the human alternatives, while the other half insisted that dimensional escape was their only viable option. While the diplomatic missions continued, Ben worked frantically with the engineering teams from all 4 ships to develop a solution. The breakthrough came when Dr. Amy Foster from the medical frigate suggested using quantum dampening fields, similar to those used in medical equipment, to safely shut down dangerous energy sources. "If we can create localized dampening fields around each device, we can neutralize them without causing explosions," Ben explained to the senior staff. "But the fields have to be placed within 500 meters of each device, and they have to be activated simultaneously across all 4 worlds." Alex immediately saw the tactical problem. That means sending teams to the surface of 4 different worlds while their defense forces are trying to stop us. It's going to be like fighting 4 wars at the same time. Admiral Martinez studied the tactical requirements and nodded grimly. "We'll have to coordinate precision strikes across 4 star systems simultaneously. One team misses their timing and the whole operation fails." Jake looked at the countdown timers showing how long they had before each alien species activated their device. The Kethara would go first in 7 days, followed by the Zelani in 10 days, then the Vrix in 13 days, and finally the Luminals in 15 days if they decided to proceed. We can't wait for them to activate one at a time, Admiral Martinez decided. If even one device goes online, it could destabilize the others. We have to disable all 4 devices within the same 30-minute window. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. They would have to attack 4 different alien species simultaneously, fighting against creatures who were only trying to save themselves from extinction. They would have to use force against beings whose only crime was being too desperate and too afraid to listen to reason. Admiral, Jake said quietly, we're about to make enemies of 4 different species to save people we've never met. There has to be another way. Admiral Martinez looked at him with sympathy, but also with the hard certainty of command. Captain, sometimes the right choice is also the hardest choice. We're not doing this because we want to. We're doing this because someone has to. She turned to address the entire group. Prepare for simultaneous operations across 4 star systems. We have 6 days to plan, position our forces, and pray that we can save these species from destroying themselves and everyone else. The coordinated attack began at exactly 0800 hours across 4 different star systems. Jake stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Edge as it approached Zella Prime, watching the Zilani defense fleet move to intercept them. The peaceful aquatic species had never built warships before, but desperation had driven them to arm their civilian vessels with whatever weapons they could create. Zilani fleet is moving to defensive positions around their dimensional device, Alex reported from his tactical station. They're not backing down, Captain. Jake opened communications with Veltar one final time, hoping against hope that the Zilani leader would see reason. The alien's large eyes filled the main screen, and Jake could see both fear and determination in them. Veltar, please listen to me, Jake said urgently. Your device will kill billions of innocent people if it fails. We can help you survive. Avoid storm using other methods. Captain Morrison, you cannot understand what you are asking, Veltar replied sadly. Our children will die if we do not escape. Our culture, our history, everything we are will be lost forever. We cannot abandon our only hope because of theoretical dangers. The dangers aren't theoretical, Jake insisted. Our calculations show exactly what will happen if your device creates a dimensional rift. Please shut it down and let us help you. Veltar's expression hardened with resolve. If you try to destroy our salvation, we will defend it with our lives. I am sorry, Captain Morrison, but we cannot trust the survival of our people to alien promises. The communication ended and Jake felt his heart sink. All around him, his crew prepared for combat against people they had come to help. It was the worst kind of fight, where both sides believed they were doing the right thing. Zilani ships are powering weapons, Alex reported. They're moving to attack formation. Target their engines and weapon systems only, Jake ordered. We're here to save them, not kill them. Disable their ships, but don't destroy them unless you have no choice. The battle that followed was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. The Zilani fought with desperate courage, throwing their makeshift warships against the human fleet in waves. Their weapons were crude but effective, and their pilots showed no fear as they tried to ram human ships to prevent them from reaching the dimensional device. On the surface of Zella Prime, Ben led a dangerous mission to place the quantum dampening field generator. His team included Corporal Nina Rodriguez, an explosives expert, and Sergeant Mike Davis, who specialized in alien electronics. They had to fight their way through Zilani ground forces who saw them as destroyers of their last hope. The device is massive, Ben reported over his radio as they approached the towering structure that rose from the ocean surface. It's drawing power from the planet's core and channeling it through crystalline matrices. I've never seen anything like it. Nina was setting shape charges to clear their path through the Zilani defensive positions. Ben, We've got maybe 10 minutes before their reinforcements arrive. Whatever you're going to do it fast." The Zelani. Defenders fought with the fury of parents protecting their children. They knew these humans were trying to destroy their only chance of survival, and they threw themselves at the human soldiers with complete disregard for their own safety. Jake watched the battle feeds and felt sick at what they were being forced to do. At the same time, similar battles were raging in 3 other star systems. Captain Maria Santos of the Defiant Storm was fighting the Kethara fleet, whose crystalline ships were nearly impervious to human weapons. The rock-like aliens had turned their entire asteroid belt into a fortress protecting their dimensional device. "Their ships are regenerating damage faster than we can inflict it," Captain Santos reported over the fleet communications. "We need a new approach." The Kethara fought with rigid military precision, but their inflexibility became their weakness. Captain Santos used unpredictable tactics, striking from unexpected angles and using the Kethara's own defensive positions against them. Slowly, the human fleet carved a path through their defenses. The battle against the Vrix was perhaps the most disturbing. The insect-like aliens coordinated their attacks with hive mind efficiency, but they also showed no regard for individual survival. Vrix fighters rammed human ships in suicide attacks while their ground forces tunneled through solid rock to attack the human landing teams from below. Captain Robert Hayes of the Newton's Pride found himself fighting an enemy that thought completely differently than humans. "It's like fighting a single giant organism," he reported. "Every ship, every soldier, every defensive position works together perfectly. But they can't adapt when we do something they don't expect." The Luminals presented a different challenge entirely. Half their fleet was trying to defend their dimensional device, while the other half was trying to help the humans shut it down. The energy-based beings were fighting a civil war even as the human fleet approached their world. Luminal Council. Prime Luxandra is requesting direct communication. Rachel reported to Jake. The shimmering form of the luminal leader appeared on the main screen, her energy patterns flickering with distress. "Captain Morrison, our people are divided. Those who support the escape plan are preparing to activate the device early to prevent your interference. We who support your alternative are trying to stop them, but we may not succeed." "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Perhaps 20 minutes before they override our objections and begin activation," Luxandra replied. 20 minutes. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing the battles raging across 4 star systems. Ben's team was still fighting to reach the Zelani device. Captain Santos was barely holding her own against the Kethara defenses. The Vrix had launched a counterattack that was pushing Captain Hayes back from their target. "All teams, priority override," Jake broadcast to the entire fleet. "We have 20 minutes to disable all 4 devices or this whole operation fails. Give everything you have." On Zella Prime, Ben finally reached the base of the dimensional device with Nina and Mike. The massive structure hummed with barely contained energy, and Ben could feel the hair on his arms standing up from the electromagnetic field surrounding it. The dampening field generator has to be placed at the exact center of the energy matrix, Ben explained as he worked with shaking hands to position the device. "If I'm off by even a few meters, it won't work." Nina was watching their backs as Zelani forces closed in from all directions. "Ben, we've got company coming fast. You've got maybe 5 minutes." "Almost there," Ben replied, sweat dripping down his face as he made final adjustments to the quantum dampening field generator. The device was about the size of a briefcase but contained technology that could safely neutralize the massive energy. Systems powering the Zelani escape plan. Across 4 star systems, similar scenes were playing out as human teams risked everything to prevent a galactic catastrophe. With seconds to spare, All 4 dampening field generators activated simultaneously. The dimensional devices shut down safely. They're dangerous. Energy dissipating harmlessly into space. The battles ended as suddenly as they had begun. The alien species found themselves staring at the humans who had just destroyed their only hope for survival, not understanding that they had actually been saved from a fate worse than extinction. The aftermath of the intervention was worse than Jake had feared. Within hours of shutting down the 4-dimensional devices, angry messages flooded in from across the galaxy. The Zilani Council declared humanity to be genocidal aggressors who had destroyed their last hope for survival. The Kethara swore eternal vengeance against the soft-fleshed destroyers who had doomed their crystal cities to extinction. The Vrix branded humans as inferior beings who lacked the wisdom to understand higher forms of existence. Jake sat in his quarters reading report after report of alien species condemning humanity's actions. The Galactic Trade Federation was calling for emergency sessions to discuss sanctions against human space. The Diplomatic Corps was threatening to revoke Earth's membership in interstellar treaties. Even species that had never heard of the Void Storms were demanding that humanity be punished for attacking 4 peaceful civilizations. Dr. Lisa Harper knocked on his door and entered when he called for her to come in. She looked exhausted from spending the last 3 days trying to document exactly what humanity had prevented, but her efforts were largely ignored by the galactic community. Captain, I've finished the complete analysis of what would have happened if even one of those dimensional devices had failed, she said, setting down a thick datapad on his desk. The cascade effect would have destroyed 847 inhabited systems. 2.3 trillion sentient beings would have died. Jake picked up the datapad and scrolled through page after page of calculations, star charts, and population estimates. The numbers were staggering, but he knew that most alien species would dismiss the human analysis as propaganda designed to justify their aggressive actions. Has anyone outside the human fleet actually looked at this data? He asked. Lisa shook her head sadly. The Galactic Science Council refused to review it. They said that humans are too primitive to understand the complexities of dimensional physics. The alien species we saved won't even speak to us anymore. A chime from Jake's communication system interrupted their conversation. Rachel's voice came through the speaker with barely controlled anger. Captain, you need to see this. The Interstellar Tribunal is broadcasting formal charges against humanity. Jake and Lisa hurried to the bridge where the main screen showed a massive chamber filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. The presiding judge was a tall, thin being from the Ethereal Council, one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. The humans stand accused of unprovoked military aggression against 4 sovereign species, the judge announced in a voice that sounded like wind through crystal caves. They attacked the Zilani, Kethara, Vrix, and Luminals without legal justification, destroying planetary defense systems and causing significant casualties. Admiral Martinez appeared on a smaller screen, standing before the tribunal to defend humanity's actions. She looked calm and professional despite facing the hostility of the entire galactic community. Your Honors, humanity acted to prevent an event. Catastrophic failure that would have killed trillions of innocent beings, she said firmly. We have detailed scientific evidence showing exactly what those dimensional devices would have done if they had activated. Evidence provided by the same species that launched the attacks, the ethereal judge replied dismissively. The tribunal finds human claims of galactic disaster to be convenient justification for aggressive expansion into alien territories. Jake watched in growing frustration as Admiral Martinez tried to present the scientific data that Lisa and her team had compiled. Every piece of evidence was dismissed as human propaganda. Every calculation was rejected as primitive mathematics. The tribunal had already decided that humanity was guilty, and nothing the Admiral said would change their minds. Dr. Amy Foster, from the medical frigate, had been working around the clock to treat the casualties from the 4 battles. She entered the bridge looking haggard and spoke quietly to Jake. "Captain, final casualty reports are in. We lost 17 crew members across all 4 operations. Lieutenant Paul Clark, Engineer Ben's brother, was killed during the insertion. Mission on the Vrix homeworld. 38 more are wounded, some seriously." Jake closed his eyes and felt the weight of those losses. 17 good people had died to save alien species that now hated humanity for the intervention. Ben's younger brother Paul had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission, knowing he might not come back. The funeral for the fallen crew members was held in the main hangar bay of the Horizon's Edge. Jake stood before 17 flag-draped caskets and tried to find words that could explain why these people had died fighting to save those who now considered them enemies. "They died protecting people who will never know their names," Jake said to the assembled crew. "They gave their lives to prevent a disaster that those they saved will never believe was real. They made the hardest choice anyone can make, to do what was right even when it would bring no recognition or gratitude." Ben stood near his brother's casket with tears streaming down his face. After the ceremony, he approached Jake with anger burning in his eyes. "Captain, my brother died to save people who are calling us murderers," Ben said bitterly. "He believed we were doing the right thing, but look at what it got us. The whole galaxy thinks we're monsters." Jake put a hand on Ben's shoulder and felt the young engineer's pain. "Ben, your brother saved 2.3 trillion lives. The fact that those lives don't know they were saved doesn't make his sacrifice any less meaningful." "Does it matter if nobody believes us?" Ben asked. "If the whole galaxy thinks we're the bad guys, maybe we made the wrong choice." Before Jake could answer, Alex approached with new intelligence that made the situation even worse. "Captain, long range. Sensors are detecting the void storms approaching the 4 target systems. They'll hit in less than 6 months. Without their dimensional escape devices, those 4 species are going to face the extinction they were trying to avoid." The irony was devastating. Humanity had saved 4 alien species from accidentally destroying themselves and much of the galaxy, only to leave them facing the original threat that had driven them to desperation in the first place. The void storms were still coming, and now the Zilani, Kethara, Vrix, and Luminals had no way to escape. "We can't just leave them to die," Lisa said quietly. "If we do nothing, they'll face extinction anyway, and then our intervention will have been pointless." Jake looked around at his crew and saw his own determination reflected in their faces. They had made enemies of 4 species to save the galaxy from catastrophic destruction. Now they had to find a way to save those same 4 species from the extinction they had been trying to escape. "Admiral Martinez was right," Jake said finally. "Sometimes the right choice is also the hardest choice. We stopped them from accidentally destroying the galaxy, but our job isn't finished yet. Now we have to help them survive the void storms using methods that won't kill everyone else." The Horizon's Edge and her crew were about to attempt something even more difficult than the intervention itself. They were going to try to save 4 alien species that hated them, using human survival techniques that those species considered primitive and worthless. 6 months after the intervention, the void storms reached the 4 target systems like massive waves of destruction moving through space. Jake stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge, watching the dark energy engulf the outer planets of the Zilani system. Despite everything that had happened between them, humanity had refused to abandon the species they had fought to save. The work had been brutal and thankless. For months, human engineering teams had worked alongside reluctant alien populations to build the survival infrastructure that could protect them from the void storms. Underground cities, atmospheric processors, orbital habitats, and environmental shields were constructed at a pace that seemed impossible, even to the humans doing the work. Ben had thrown himself into the survival projects with desperate energy, as if building enough shelters and life support systems could somehow bring his brother Paul back. He worked 18-hour days designing underground habitats for the Zilani, crystal growth chambers for the Cathara, hive cities for the Vrix, and energy containment systems for the Luminals. The Zilani evacuation is 70% complete. Ben reported to Jake as they watched the Void Storm's leading edge strip away the atmosphere from Zella Prime's outer moon. Their deep ocean cities should be able to maintain stable environments even if the surface becomes uninhabitable. The process had not been clean or perfect. Despite humanity's best efforts, the 4 alien species still suffered massive casualties as the Void Storms hit their worlds. The Zilani lost 40% of their population when several of their floating cities couldn't be evacuated in time. The Cathara's crystal-based biology proved difficult to sustain in the artificial environments, and many of their eldest and most fragile members died during the transition underground. Dr. Lisa Harper had worked tirelessly to understand each species-specific biological needs and adapt human survival technology accordingly. She spent weeks living in Vrix hive cities, breathing their methane-rich atmosphere through specialized equipment, while she designed life support systems that could keep their complex social structures intact. The Vrix queen mothers are adapting to the underground colonies better than we expected, Lisa reported during one of their regular briefings. Their collective consciousness actually helps them coordinate resource distribution more efficiently than individual species could manage. The Luminals presented unique challenges since they existed as pure energy rather than physical matter. Dr. Amy Foster worked with their energy specialist to create containment fields that could protect them from the electromagnetic disruption caused by the void storms. Many luminals had to compress their consciousness into smaller energy matrices, essentially becoming shadows of their former selves to survive. "We're saving them, but we're also changing them," Amy told Jake during one of their planning sessions. "None of these species will be the same after this experience. The question is whether they'll thank us or hate us even more for forcing them to adapt." The answer came gradually as the void storms passed and the 4 species began to emerge from their survival shelters. The Zilani were the first to make contact, and Veltar's message was complex and conflicted. "Captain Morrison, our people live because of your intervention," the Zilani leader said during their first communication in months. "But we also mourn the loss of our old way of life. We can never again float freely on the surface of our oceans. Our children will grow up in underground cities, never knowing the beauty of our crystal reefs or the songs of our deep water creatures." Jake felt the weight of that loss. Humanity had saved the Zilani from extinction, but they had also forced them to abandon everything that had made their civilization unique and beautiful. The Cathara response was more dramatic. Their chief engineer Zaunakala, who had once dismissed humans as primitive soft-flesh creatures, now spoke with grudging respect. "Your survival methods are crude but effective," Zaunakala admitted during a formal ceremony. "We who claim technological superiority were prepared to destroy ourselves and others rather than adapt to changing conditions. You who we called primitives showed us how to bend without breaking." The Vrix reaction was perhaps the most significant. Queen Speaker Zixthara, who had once called humans lower life forms, now included human survival techniques in the collective knowledge of her species. "The hive mind has been expanded to include human adaptive strategies," she announced. "Your individual survival instincts have been integrated into our collective consciousness. We are no longer purely Vrix, but something new that includes human knowledge." Only the luminals showed genuine gratitude without reservation. Council Prime Luxandra had worked closely with human engineers throughout the crisis and had developed a deep appreciation for humanity's approach to survival. Your species possesses a quality we had not encountered before, she told Jake during a private meeting. You choose to preserve life even when it brings you no benefit. You fight to save those who hate you. This is a form of nobility we wish to learn from. As the crisis ended and the galactic community began to understand what had really happened, the Interstellar Tribunal quietly dropped all charges against humanity. Several species that had condemned the intervention now privately thanked Captain Morrison for his actions. The Galactic Science Council finally reviewed the human data and confirmed that the dimensional cascade would have been exactly as catastrophic as humanity had predicted. But Jake took no satisfaction in being proven right. He stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge looking out at the Zelani system, where underground cities now glowed beneath the ocean surface where floating crystal palaces had once danced on the waves. Dr. Lisa Harper joined him at the PIA observation window, and they watched in silence as Zelani children played in artificial crystal gardens that could never match the beauty of their lost natural reefs. Did we do the right thing? Lisa asked quietly. Jake thought about that question for a long time before answering. We saved them from extinction, but we couldn't save them from change. We stopped them from accidentally destroying the galaxy, but we couldn't stop the void storms from destroying their old way of life. They're alive, Lisa pointed out. Those children playing in the crystal gardens exist because we intervened. Their parents might mourn what was lost, but their children will grow up in the world we helped create. A new alert sounded from the bridge, and Rachel's voice came over the communication system. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Corvin system. They're facing extinction from solar instability and have developed a plan to artificially induce a supernova to reset their star's fusion cycle. Jake looked at Lisa and saw his own grim determination reflected in her eyes. Another alien species was about to try a desperate solution that could kill millions of others. Another intervention would be necessary to save them from their own attempt at salvation. Here we go again, Jake said quietly. They walked back to the bridge together, knowing that humanity had somehow become the galaxy's unwilling guardians. They were the species that made the hard choices others couldn't make. The ones who preserved life even when it meant being hated for it. As the Horizon's Edge changed course toward the Corvin system, Jake realized that this was humanity's role in the galaxy. Not as conquerors or saviors, but as the people willing to bear the burden of impossible decisions. They were the ones who stopped others from destroying themselves, even when those others would never understand or appreciate the sacrifice. Final message in Jake's personal log reads simply, "We are not the heroes of this story. We are the people who do what heroes cannot do. We save lives by making choices that heroes would never make. And we live with the consequences so that others don't have to."